The events unfolded so fast I barely had time to react. It was Saturday. My best friend Amanda had dragged me to an afternoon of shopping, insisting that a new French bakery had just opened at the shops in Columbus Circle. She was determined to make me try their desserts, no matter what. I didn't really feel like it, but I figured getting some fresh air wouldn't hurt. My 18-year-old son, Alex, was completely absorbed preparing for a national coding competition, spending his days locked in his room writing code. But who the hell could have imagined that going out for fresh air would drag me straight to hell? On the third floor, near the entrance of the Children's Entertainment Center, Amanda was pulling my arm, trying to lead me toward a nearby store, a shoe shop. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a silhouette and froze on the spot as if I had been struck by lightning. That figure was entirely too familiar. William Prescott was wearing the dark gray cashmere coat I had bought him just last month. It had a custom monogram on the cuff, one of a kind in the world. In his arms, he was holding a little boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old. The kid had his arms wrapped tightly around William's neck, laughing with pure joy. My first thought was, wasn't he supposed to be on a business trip in Boston today? My second thought didn't even have time to form before the kid himself answered it for me. Dad, I want that huge dinosaur. The boy pointed at a gigantic stuffed T-Rex in the window display. His clear, ringing voice reached my ears perfectly. Dad. That's what he called him. Dad. A low hum started vibrating in my ears, like a hive of bees had just detonated inside my skull. Amanda was still distracted by her phone, trying to locate the bakery on Apple Maps and muttering to herself. I stumbled, my weight crashing against the glass railing. Only then did her head snap up. Catherine, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. I didn't answer. My eyes remained locked on that exact spot. William set the boy down crouched and ruffled his hair. His face radiated a tenderness, a soft, genuine smile I hadn't seen once in 20 years of marriage. Standing right beside him was a woman with wavy hair and a sharp jawline, wearing a white tweed coat and clinging intimately to his arm. I knew her. Vanessa Parker, William's executive assistant. 3 years ago, on my birthday, I stopped by his office. That was the same woman who handed me a cup of coffee with a radiant smile saying, "Mrs. Prescott, your coffee." Back then, she wore a modest business suit, her hair pulled back into a flawless bun. Where was that demure girl now, compared to the provocative woman standing there? Amanda followed my gaze and let out a sharp gasp. That's him! That's him! I stayed dead silent. My fingers were already trembling, but I still managed to pull my phone from my purse. Through the camera lens, I watched William wrap an arm around the boy as they walked into a high-end toy store. Vanessa trailed behind them, pulled a $150 Lego set off the shelf, and handed it to the kid. He jumped with excitement, spun around, and yelled at William. "Thanks, Dad. You're the best!" William leaned down and kissed the boy's forehead. Click! I tapped the shutter. Then, a second photo. A third. A fourth. They walked out of the store and wandered over to an ice cream cart. William held the boy with one hand and Vanessa with the other. The three of them strolled together like a real family. The kid got ice cream all over his face, and William pulled a handkerchief from his pocket to gently wipe it away. He had never done anything like that for our son Alex. When Alex was 5, he spiked a terrifying fever. I called William begging him to come home, but he said he had a board meeting and couldn't leave. When our boy took first place in a piano competition at age 8, I sent him a video. He replied with a dry, single word. Nice. Alex was 18 now, And for all those years, I had gone to every parent-teacher conference alone. I sat solo at every single event. I gave this man a son. I raised him for 18 years, and William had never once shared an ice cream with him. Amanda grabbed my arm, her voice shaking. "Catherine, you're scaring me. Say something." I slipped my phone back into my bag, turned around, and leaned my back against the glass railing, taking a slow, deep breath. "Let's go." Amanda's eyes went wide. "You're just going to leave? You're not going to march over there and tear everything apart," I said. "Let's go." I grabbed her wrist, and without a backward glance, I left the third floor. It wasn't until I slid into her car and slammed the door shut that I realized my palms were bleeding from my own fingernails. Amanda started the engine, watching me in the rearview mirror, but she kept quiet. I pulled up the photo on my phone and zoomed in. The boy's face was sweet, and you could clearly make out William's features, especially those almond-shaped eyes. The spitting image of Will. He looked about 5 or 6. That meant William and Vanessa had been together for at least 6 or 7 years. 6 or 7 years. During that exact timeline, I was working myself to the bone managing the Prescott family's real estate portfolio, helping him expand into international markets. I worked until I gave myself a stomach ulcer and spent 2 months in the hospital. Back then, my son was still in elementary school, asking me every single day when his dad was coming home. And I lied to him. I told him his father was just very busy and would have free time soon. Hilarious. I leaned my head against the cold glass and suddenly burst out laughing. I laughed until tears blurred my vision. Amanda tossed a box of tissues into the back seat and cursed under her breath. "Catherine Brox, don't do this. If you need to cry, cry. But don't laugh. Seriously, your laugh is giving me goosebumps." I didn't take the tissues. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. My voice sounded so calm, it even surprised me. "Amanda, take me to a law firm. It's late. Let's do it tomorrow. Tomorrow is Sunday. They'll be closed." Amanda bit her lip, stayed quiet for about 5 seconds, and then jerked the steering wheel hard. The car tore through an intersection heading downtown. On the way, I called Alex. He picked up on the third ring. "Mom." His voice was raspy. He had obviously pulled another all-nighter coding. Hearing his voice, my breath suddenly hitched in my throat. It took me several seconds to find the words. "Son, I need to ask you something." "Yeah, what's up?" I gripped the phone tighter. "If your father and I get divorced, who would you stay with?" There was absolute dead silence on the other end of the line for a solid 10 seconds. When Alex finally spoke, his voice had dropped an octave. "Mom, what happened?" "Don't ask. Just answer me, first." Without hesitation, "With you." Those 2 words hit like the heavy strike of a gavel. Then he repeated it. "Mom, no matter what happens, I'm staying with you." I closed my eyes and the tears finally spilled over, but I didn't make a sound. "Okay, Mom understands. Go to bed early. Don't stay up late." I hung up and placed the phone face down on my lap. Amanda's car was already parked in front of an imposing glass office building. She left the engine running, turned, and looked at me. "Mitchell, an old law school friend of my brother's. I called him. He came back to the office just for this and is waiting for us." "Thank you, Amanda." "Stop thanking me," she muttered, looking away, though her voice wavered. "I'm going up with you." Mr. Mitchell was in his 40s, wore gold-rimmed glasses, and looked exactly like a man who had witnessed a lifetime of clients' tears. He poured me a glass of warm water and slid a standard divorce settlement template across the desk. "Mrs. Prescott, please review this. If anything needs to be added, I'll make the amendments." I flipped through page after page. division of assets, stock transfers, property allocation, child custody. Every single line felt like a blade twisting in my heart, but I forced myself to read it word for word. All real estate properties go to me, I said. Full custody of my son goes to me. His share of the company stock remains the same, but I want 15% of Jure's Tech's shares placed in a trust under my control. Mitchell adjusted his glasses. Controlling a trust. That won't be easy. I'm afraid Mr. Prescott won't agree to that. I pulled up the photo on my phone and slid it across the mahogany desk. Tell him that if he doesn't agree by tomorrow, this photo will land in the inbox of every board member and every partner at Jure's Tech. Mitchell looked at the screen. Not a single muscle in his face twitched. He just nodded. Understood. Amanda, who was pouring herself some water, froze and stared at me. Her eyes held pain, but mostly they held shock. We had been friends for over a decade, and she had probably never seen me like this. And why would she have? When had Catherine Brox ever been ruthless? For 20 years of marriage, I was always William Prescott's sweet, agreeable wife. I managed the house, raised our boy, and entertained insufferable guests at corporate galas. When his business faced a massive liquidity crisis early on, I sold 2 properties inherited from my parents to clear his debts. When his company finally took off, I handed him every political and business contact my late father had left me. When his mother fell ill, I nursed her for 2 years as if she were my own. Everyone said William Prescott had found the perfect wife. And what did the perfect wife get in return? A 6-year-old illegitimate child with his secretary. And I was the very last to know. I read the divorce papers again, from beginning to end. I picked up a pen and was about to sign the last page when my phone rang. The screen flashed. Alex. I froze, then answered. Mom, where are you? The kid's tone was strange. It carried a chilling calm I had never heard from him before. Nothing like an 18-year-old boy. I'm just running some errands, honey. Are you at a law firm? It wasn't a question. It was a statement. My head snapped up to look at Amanda. She shook her head frantically, gesturing that it hadn't been her. Alex, listen to me. Mom, I know about Dad. Alex's voice was flat, like he was discussing the weather. I got the photos 3 days ago. Security camera footage from the mall hotel, booking logs, the lease agreement for that woman's apartment, even the kids' checkout logs from daycare. I have everything. I'm going to give you a massive gift. What gift? On the other end, I could hear the rapid clack of a mechanical keyboard. Alex let out a dark, quiet laugh. A gift my father will remember for the rest of his life. When we walked out of the law firm, it was around 6 in the evening. Amanda pulled the car up to the curb and asked if I was hungry. I shook my head and told her to take me home. Home. What a joke. William and I had lived in that house for 12 years. From the renovations to the furniture, my hands had touched every inch of it. Once holding my hand, he stood in the middle of the living room and said, "Home is wherever you are." Now I understood that men's words were nothing but cheap lies. The car pulled up to the gates of our estate. I saw William's Mercedes SUV already parked in the driveway. Amanda gripped the steering wheel, glancing at me sideways a few times, before finally saying, "Call me if anything happens. I'm on call 24/7. Don't worry." I got out of the car. My heels clicked sharply against the stone path. At the door, the fingerprint scanner beeped and unlocked. The warm yellow light of the living room spilled into the foyer. William was sitting on the sofa, one leg crossed over the other, watching financial news. On the coffee table in front of him sat a half-finished glass of red wine. Hearing the door open, he didn't even turn his head. He just asked, with casual indifference. "Where were you?" Maria said. "You went out this afternoon?" I dropped my purse on the console table and walked over to the armchair across from him. That was the spot where I sat every night to peel fruit for him, pour his tea, and listen to his stories about corporate affairs I supposedly couldn't understand. Back then, I believed that was happiness, the simplest, truest manifestation of married life. Now, it just made me sick to my stomach. William Prescott. I used his full name. In 20 years, I had almost never called him that. It was always Will or Honey. He was clearly taken aback and finally pulled his eyes from the TV to look at me. He was a handsome man. At 48, his features were still sharp, and thanks to his relentless gym sessions, he kept an excellent physique. Anything he wore looked like it was tailored for him. Vanessa Parker was 12 years younger than me. It was no wonder she had fallen for him. I pulled up the photo on my phone and turned the screen toward him. In it, he was hugging the boy Vanessa clinging to his arm. All three of them smiling perfectly happy. I tossed the phone onto the coffee table. The glass surface let out a dull thud. William looked at the photo and the faint smile slowly drained from his face. But he didn't lose his composure. He didn't even flinch. He just leaned back against the sofa, picked up his wine glass, took a sip, and looked me dead in the eyes. "Were you following me?" he asked, his tone completely serene. I almost laughed out of sheer fury. William Prescott. "I went to Columbus Circle to do some shopping and bumped into you by accident. You cheat on your wife and you can't even be bothered to pick a spot further away, strolling through a downtown mall? Very convenient, I must say." He took another sip of wine, set the glass down, and after a moment of silence, let out a soft chuckle. "Well, since you've seen it, I won't hide it." That sentence snapped the final thread holding my soul together. I won't hide it. He could speak to me with such indifference as if he were just telling me what he had for dinner. "How old is the boy?" I heard my own voice, cold as ice. 5.5. "Who is that woman?" "Vanessa Parker." "You know her?" I know her." I dug my nails into the leather armrests of the chair. "I'm asking you what she is to you." William stood up, walked over to the panoramic window, and turned his back to me. The pitch-black night reflected in the glass, stretching his shadow across the floor. "She's the mother of my child," he said lightly, like he was stating some trivial fact. I laughed. My lips were trembling, but the smile wouldn't leave my face. "Your child? And what about me? What about Alex? Who is he?" "He's 18 years old. How many times have you eaten dinner with him?" "At every single one of his coding tournaments, at every competition, when he was sick in the hospital." "Where were you?" William turned around. A flash of irritation crossed his eyes. "Catherine, don't change the subject. Alex is my son. That will never change." "But Tyler needs looking after too." Tyler. He had even given him a name. I grabbed the wine glass off the table and hurled it at the floor with every ounce of strength I had. Red wine splattered everywhere. Glass shards glittered under the lamplight. William frowned and took a step back. "What are you doing?" "What am I doing, William? You tell me." "What am I doing?" I stood up and marched toward him. "I, Catherine Brox, have been married to you for 20 years. I gave you a son. I helped you build your company. I nursed your dying mother. And this is what you do to me? 6 years. You lied to me for 6 years." I didn't want to lie to you. His tone was still just as light, just as detached. "I simply didn't know how to tell you." You didn't know how to tell me? I raised my hand and slapped him hard across the face. The sharp crack echoed through the massive room. William's head snapped to the side. 5 red finger marks bloomed instantly across his pale cheek. Slowly, he turned back to look at me. His gaze had shifted, turning absolutely glacial. Catherine, calm down. I am perfectly calm. I pulled the divorce papers from my bag and slammed them onto the table. Sign them, William Prescott. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the courthouse. The house our son, 15% of Jurace Tech shares placed in a trust. Everything goes to me. William picked up the papers and skimmed through a few pages. Seeing the asset division clause, he scowled. 15% in a trust? You've lost your mind. The only one who's lost his mind here is you. Let's not waste time. I pulled out my phone and waved it at him. If you don't sign by tomorrow, the entire board of Jurace Tech, all your partners, and the Wall Street Journal will receive this photo along with a full dossier on that woman and that child. William's face finally dropped. You wouldn't dare. Try me. We stood face to face like 2 cornered animals. The room was so quiet, you could hear the ticking of the wall clock. After about half a minute, William took a deep breath and tossed the papers back onto the table. Fine. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. About the shares, I need to think about it. I pulled a pen from my purse and held it out to him. Then write that condition into the addendum. If you refuse, you automatically waive all custody rights over Alex. Sign it. William stared at the pen. His eyes burned with rage, but he held it back. Finally, he snatched it, scribbled a few lines in the addendum, and threw the pen onto the table. Catherine, you're going to regret this. The only thing I regret is ever agreeing to marry you. Without looking at him, I snatched up the papers and marched upstairs. After locking my bedroom door, I dropped my purse and my phone, sliding down the wood grain until I hit the floor. All the fierce determination I had projected downstairs simply evaporated. My legs were shaking like jelly, tears were streaming down my face, but I didn't make a sound. I just bit my lip until it bled, swallowing all my agony. My phone lit up, a message from Alex. Mom, I saw everything on the camera. Nice slap. I looked up at the security camera in the hallway. He had installed the entire smart home system. I had completely forgotten. I wiped my tears and sent a voice note trying desperately to keep my voice steady. Go to bed early. I have errands tomorrow. Make yourself some dinner, he replied instantly. Tomorrow's errands can wait. Mom, come to my room. I stood frozen. When I went upstairs, there was no light under his door. I thought he was asleep. Apparently, he hadn't even gone to bed. I took a deep breath, stood up, washed my face, changed into comfortable clothes, and walked to the end of the hall. I knocked twice and heard his voice. Come in. When I opened the door, I was stunned. Alex's room used to be pure chaos. A desk buried under computer parts and mechanical keyboards. A bed eternally unmade. But right now, it was spotless. Pinned to the whiteboard on the wall were printed documents, photos, and a massive timeline. In the center, 4 massive words were written in marker. Countdown. 3 days. He was sitting in his chair with his back to me, staring at 3 curved monitors. The screens were filled with cascading data spreadsheets and camera feeds. I recognized some of the lines. They were financial reports from Jurace Tech. What is this? He spun around, took off his glasses, and wiped them on the edge of his t-shirt. Without the glasses, those almond-shaped eyes, identical to William's, stared back at me with a cold, piercing clarity that had no business belonging to a teenager. Evidence of my father's crimes. Those words dropped like a sledgehammer. When Alex said those words, I felt like the oxygen had been sucked right out of the room. I stood in the doorway, staring at the 3 monitors flashing with rows of data and camera feeds, completely at a loss for words. This 18-year-old boy, the one I had carried in my womb for 9 months and raised, was sitting in front of me with the chilling calm of a veteran military strategist. He looked nothing like the sleepy, sweet-toothed kid who used to beg me for half an hour more of video games. "What did you say?" I stepped into the room, closed the door, and lowered my voice. "What do you mean by crimes?" Alex put his glasses back on. His long fingers danced across the keyboard. On the left monitor, a folder popped open containing dozens of files, PDFs, videos, and endless spreadsheets. "Mom, sit down." He pushed his chair back to make room for me. "I need to explain everything to you. But first, promise me you won't do anything crazy after hearing this." I sat on the edge of his bed, laced my fingers together in my lap, and forced my voice to stay steady. "Go ahead. I won't." Alex took a deep breath and opened the first file. A bank statement appeared on the screen. Endless rows of numbers. I recognized the account name. It was William's personal account, but one I had never seen before. The phone number attached wasn't his usual one. Dad opened this account 6 years ago in the Cayman Islands. Alex pointed to several lines highlighted in red. Over the past 6 years, roughly $40 million have been transferred out of this account. $40 million. I stared at the number and my head started to pound. I knew the Prescott family was wealthy. Jurius Tech's market cap was in the billions, and William's personal net worth easily reached several hundred million. But $40 million in hard cash secretly siphoned off from his personal ledger? I had absolutely no idea where that money went. Alex didn't answer right away. He opened a second file. It was a property deed. Address, Malibu, California. Owner, Vanessa Parker. Registration date, March 2019. This villa is worth about $5 million, paid in cash. Alex's voice was as expressionless as an automated weather broadcast. The payer was exactly that Cayman account. He opened a third file. An apartment in Tribeca, New York. Owner, Vanessa Parker's mother. But also paid from that account. $6 million. Fourth file. A Porsche Cayenne and a Tesla Model X, both registered in her name. About $300,000 total. I stared at the documents, each one twisting like a knife in my chest. 6 years. $40 million. A villa in Malibu, an apartment in Manhattan, 2 luxury cars. That man had poured money like water, money that should have belonged to my son and me, all over that woman. And he wasn't just siphoning cash. Alex switched the screen. It now showed a diagram of Jurius Tech's shareholder structure. "Mom, look at this. 8% of Jurius Tech shares, which used to be in Dad's trust, were actually transferred 3 years ago through an offshore shell company to Vanessa Parker. The company is registered in the British Virgin Islands. Its director is a figurehead, but the ultimate beneficiary is Vanessa." My hands were shaking. 8% of Jurius Tech was worth about $70 million at current market value. Add that to the $40 million in cash and the real estate. In 6 years, William had secretly drained nearly $120 million from our family. "How did you find all this?" Alex adjusted his glasses, and a faint smile finally touched his lips. It was a mix of teenage pride and unnatural maturity. "Mom, do you know what your son does?" I built the entire smart network for this house. Dad's computer, his phone, his tablet, all connected to the same network. He thought his passwords protected him, but to me, they were an open book. He paused and added, "Besides, he logged into his Cayman account from his home office computer more than once. Browsing history, passwords, transfer, verification codes, it was all there." I sat in silence, unsure whether to feel proud or terrified. My 18-year-old son had managed to gut every single one of his father's secrets. But thinking about it, what had William actually given him during those 18 years? A man who never once fulfilled his duties as a father. Why should he demand loyalty from his son? And there's this. Alex opened a video file. The screen showed a luxuriously furnished office. I recognized it. It was the CEO's office on the top floor of Juray's Tech headquarters. The camera was clearly hidden. In the frame, you could see the massive mahogany desk, William sitting behind it, and Vanessa sitting across from him. Vanessa spoke first. Her voice was seductive, flirting. "Will everything is set for the new product launch? You're going to announce my appointment as vice president, right?" William smiled, stood up, walked over to her, and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Of course, honey. It's all arranged. The whole board will be there. You'll go up on stage, say a few words, and I'll announce the promotion." What if she doesn't accept the divorce? Vanessa tilted her head, showing off her sharp jawline. "Your wife isn't someone you can fool easily." William let out a laugh. That cold, dismissive laugh pierced my heart like a shard of ice. "She's just a pretty vase. She's lived in our house for years, with everything handed to her on a silver platter. She has no real skills. I only stayed married to her this long so Alex would have a complete family. Don't worry. When Tyler is a bit older, I'll tell her everything. If she's smart, she'll take a payout and leave." "And if she isn't?" Vanessa asked. William leaned in and whispered in her ear. His voice was low, but the hidden camera's microphone was excellent, and every single word came through with terrifying clarity. "Then I'll throw her out with nothing. All her income comes from our family. Her parents are dead. What is she going to fight me with?" The image froze on William's smiling face. He was still handsome, with those refined features and that gentle smile. But looking at him now, I felt the blood freezing in my veins. "Mom!" Alex spun his chair toward me and looked me dead in the eyes. His face was calm, but I noticed his fingers trembling over the keyboard, clenching and unclenching. "I got all this 3 days ago. Do you know how hard it was to hold myself back?" I reached out and stroked his hair. His hair was soft, like mine, not coarse like William's. When he was little, the kids at school used to tease him and call him a sheep. Who would have guessed that this sheep had an entire arsenal hiding in his head? "Do you know why I didn't want you to sign the divorce papers?" he asked. "I suppose you were afraid I'd walk away with nothing." Alex shook his head, and a cold smile crossed his lips. Not just that. He switched the screen and opened another document. This time, it was an email. Sender, William Prescott. Recipient, Gregory Lawson. I quickly ran the name through my head. Gregory Lawson, head of the legal department at Juray's Tech. He had been with the company for over a decade, one of William's most trusted men. The email was brief. I read it word for word, chilled to the bone. "Greg, the post-divorce asset division strategy is moving forward. Under current state laws, if we can prove marital fault on Catherine's part during the marriage, I can significantly reduce her share of the marital estate. I recommend you start gathering the appropriate evidence as soon as possible. Also, after the launch, I need to finalize Tyler's legal recognition to include him in the succession of the Juray's Tech Trust. Regards, Will." I reread the email 3 times to make sure I had understood it correctly. William had been preparing for this divorce for a long time, and he was already weaving schemes to shrink my share as much as humanly possible. He was going to manufacture a fault. I, Catherine Brox, had been an exemplary wife and mother for 20 years without making a single misstep. What could he possibly invent against me? And even more infuriating, Tyler's legal recognition, including him in the succession. William didn't just want to hand assets to Vanessa. He was going to officially bring his illegitimate son into the Prescott family to compete with my son for the inheritance. Instinctively, I grabbed Alex's wrist, not realizing how hard I was squeezing until my knuckles turned white. Alex, he won't get away with this, will he? Of course not. Alex covered my hand with his and patted it. That's why I told you to wait 3 days. He closed all the files, stood up, and walked over to the whiteboard. On it was a timeline drawn in marker that started 3 days ago and ended next Wednesday. He pointed to the final spot, the Gerace Tech new product launch in the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel. Alex said, "The entire board partners dozens of journalists. Everyone will be there." He circled the date with a thick marker. Dad plans to announce 2 things. First, the launch of the new product line. Second, Vanessa Parker's promotion to vice president. Alex turned and looked at me. His smile was unreadable, like a cat watching a mouse tremble in a corner. But he doesn't know there will be a third announcement. He pulled a small box from his desk drawer and set it on top. Inside was a tiny microphone, small enough to hide in a button, along with a small transmitter. "I've already hacked the venue's AV system," Alex said casually, as if he were talking about ordering a pizza. "What do you want everyone to see and hear? Just tell me in advance." I picked up the microphone and rolled it between my fingers. "Mom." He looked me straight in the eyes and repeated, "Mom." Then he spoke a sentence in a low voice, but sharp as the edge of a sword. "I'm not asking you to beg him. I'm asking you to bury him." Silence fell over the room for 5 solid seconds. I stood up from the bed, walked over to the whiteboard, and studied the timeline. The date Vanessa joined Gerace Tech. The date the illegitimate child was born. The date the Cayman account was opened. The date of the first transfer. The dates of every real estate purchase. Every payment. All the evidence was there, like nails driven into the board, clear and methodical. I turned around, clutching the microphone in my hand. 3 days from now, at the launch. Alex smiled and did something I rarely saw him do. He made a fist and held it out to me. I made a fist too, and bumped it gently against his. "Let's burn them to ashes." I didn't sleep that night. I lay in our master bedroom. The space beside me was empty. William had left. I didn't know when. Maybe to the office, maybe to Vanessa's house. I no longer cared. I was left alone in the massive California king bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying all the evidence my son had shown me. When dawn broke, I decided to stop trying to sleep. I got up, took a shower, and put on a sharply tailored, flawless black suit. As I did my makeup in front of the mirror, I saw a woman with a perfect presence and an impassive face, and she looked like a stranger to me. What had I turned into over all these years? William Prescott's sweet, virtuous wife? The understanding, magnanimous Catherine? Everyone praised my soft nature and my good breeding, and what did I get in return? 6 years of infidelity, $120 million in stolen assets, and a pre-written letter designed to leave me with absolutely nothing. When I finished applying my lipstick, I said quietly to my reflection, "Catherine Brox, you woke up late, but not too late." At 7:30 in the morning, I went downstairs. Maria had already set the table for breakfast, buttermilk pancakes, and crispy bacon. Everything William liked. For 20 years, breakfast in our house was tailored to his tastes. I actually preferred coffee and croissants, but I never mentioned it. Now, it just seemed ridiculous. Mr. Prescott left last night and hasn't returned. Do you want me to call him? Maria asked. No need. I picked up a coffee cup and took a sip. My voice sounded surprisingly calm. By the way, Maria, from now on, stop making breakfast to his taste. Make coffee and croissants. I prefer them. Maria froze. She seemed to sense something, but she didn't ask. She just nodded. Of course, ma'am. After breakfast, I went upstairs and knocked on Alex's door. No answer. I pushed it open and saw him asleep, face down on his desk. His glasses were crooked, and a little drool had pooled at the corner of his mouth. The 3 monitors were still on lines of data cascading down the screens. I walked over to wake him up and send him to bed, but the second I got close, he shot up like a coiled spring. Mom, what time is it? 7:40. Why didn't you sleep in your bed? He rubbed his eyes and adjusted his glasses, his voice thick with sleep. Last night, I was cross-referencing data from Vanessa Parker's social media. A lot of what she posted on Instagram and her private Facebook could be useful. He typed something, and screenshots popped up on the monitor. The profile picture of her private Instagram account. Her holding the kid with the caption, "My whole universe." Below that were several posts. One from a vacation abroad, holding a Hermes bag captioned, "Birthday gift from my husband." Another photo of a massive Maine lobster dinner. My husband says autumn is for eating lobster. Alex had circled the date of each post in red. Look at these dates. Last September when she posted this, Dad told you he was at a tech conference in Dallas. He was actually eating seafood with her in Maine. And the year before, on Valentine's Day, he said he was meeting clients in Miami, but he was on vacation with her in St. Bart's. I looked at the posts, each date clearly marked alongside William's lies. All this evidence formed a 6-year timeline of their affair, detailed and irrefutable. But it wasn't enough. Alex opened another file. Mom, look at this. I found this last night. A draft of Gerace Tech's internal audit report. A PDF appeared on the screen titled Internal Audit Report, Gerace Tech Incorporated, 2024 Draft. 2 points were highlighted in yellow. I leaned in and my heart sank. The first point read, during the review, serious suspicions of insider trading were identified. CEO William Prescott executed trades through affiliated offshore accounts prior to the release of material, non-public information. Estimated transaction volume, $50 million. The second point. The evaluation procedure for vice presidential candidate Vanessa Parker contains significant irregularities. Documentation verifying the qualifications of candidate Vanessa Parker is incomplete. Furthermore, her undisclosed personal relationship with CEO William Prescott constitutes a severe violation of corporate governance principles. I looked up at Alex. Where did you get this? From Gerace Tech's internal servers. They use a commercial enterprise cloud. The encryption is decent, but for me, it's like Legos, easy to take apart. He spoke casually, but I noticed the red veins in his eyes. The night had clearly been brutal for him. The internal audit team submitted this 3 days ago. The draft hasn't reached the board yet. Dad held it back, wanting the auditors to scrub those 2 points before sending it out. So, he didn't just cheat on me. He committed federal crimes. Exactly. Alex smiled coldly. $50 million in insider trading. Under SEC laws, that's enough to put him in federal prison for years. Plus embezzlement, falsifying corporate records. Mom, I don't just want him to lose. I want him destroyed. I leaned against the desk, crossed my arms, and stayed silent for a long time. Outside the window, the birds were singing. The morning sun illuminated my son's face, which still held a certain boyish softness. 18 years old. At that age, other kids were stressing over SATs and their first crushes. My son was calculating his father's federal offenses. Alex, I started, my voice trembling slightly. You hate him. Alex didn't answer right away. He took off his glasses and wiped them slowly with his shirt, keeping his eyes down so I couldn't see his expression. A long time passed before he spoke. Mom, remember when I was in 4th grade and I competed in that regional math Olympiad? I took first place. On the day of the award ceremony, I specifically told him about it, and he promised he would come. I waited by the auditorium doors for 2 hours. When everyone had left, you were the only one still standing next to me. He put his glasses back on and looked up at me. His eyes were slightly red. Since that day, I stopped hating him, because when you expect nothing, you can't be disappointed. But Mom, his gaze suddenly turned sharp like a grown man's. He shouldn't have hurt you. That I cannot tolerate. My eyes stung. Before the tears could fall, I looked away and took several deep breaths to push the emotion down. Now was not the time to cry. I could cry when the curtain finally fell. All right. I patted his shoulder. The day after tomorrow, at the launch, compile everything usable into a single package. You handle the tech, I'll handle the acting. Alex smiled. And in that smile there was a hint of his father, but entirely different. William's smile was pure hypocrisy and calculation. Alex's was pure steel. Mom, I have something for you. He pulled a small jewelry box from his drawer and handed it to me. I opened it. Inside was an exquisite sapphire brooch. It has an integrated HD micro camera and microphone right in the center, Alex explained. 120-degree wide angle, 30-foot audio range. You just press the button on the side, and it live streams directly to me. I've already built a back door into the plaza's projection system. As soon as you press it, everyone will see exactly what you want them to see. I picked up the brooch. It was so well crafted that no one would ever suspect it held electronics. The sapphire sparkled in the sun, cold and blue like a frozen lake. You little genius. If you put this energy into your studies, you'd already be at MIT. Alex laughed. What's so fun about MIT? The real business is taking down Dad with you. I couldn't help but laugh with him. For the first time since the day before, I truly laughed. That afternoon, life continued as usual. I went to the salon, got a manicure, and had a facial. The esthetician complimented me, saying I didn't look a day over 30. I smiled, thinking to myself, the day after tomorrow, everyone will see that Catherine Brox doesn't just look good. She also hides a razor-sharp blade. Around 4 in the afternoon, my phone rang. William's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it for a few seconds before answering, making sure my voice sounded softer than usual. Hello, Catherine. His tone sounded surprised. He clearly didn't expect me to sound so calm about the divorce. I think we need to talk again. Let's not go to the courthouse tomorrow. A cold smile formed on my lips, but my voice remained pleasant. Oh, you changed your mind. I haven't changed my mind. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I just think we've been married for 20 years. There's no need to turn this into an ugly scandal. We can discuss the division of assets calmly. There's no need to rush. Discuss calmly. He wanted to buy time. Wait for the audit report to be scrubbed. Wait for the product launch to be a success. Wait for Vanessa's appointment as VP to become official. Then he would hold all the cards. And he wouldn't come to talk. He would come to crush me. Well, I leaned back on the sofa, crossing my legs. My voice was even. You're right. 20 years of marriage. It's better to separate amicably. We don't have to go to the courthouse tomorrow, but Mitchell is already drafting the divorce agreement, and all the clauses remain the same. Silence fell on the other end of the line again. Catherine, do you really think you can blackmail me with that photo? What do you think? I hung up. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and bright red. I sat on the sofa, turning the phone over in my hands, and suddenly felt an absolute tranquility. It was the calm before the storm. The day after tomorrow, Jeray's Tech's new product launch, the Plaza Hotel Ballroom. I, Catherine Brox, would put on my finest armor. I would walk into that room full of fake smiles in my highest heels and drop the truth on all of them. William thought I was just a devoted wife. He had no idea that my son and I had already flipped the chessboard. On the third day, the day before the launch, the doorbell woke me up. I checked the clock. It was only 7:30 in the morning. Maria had the day off to visit her family. It was just Alex and me in the house. I threw on a robe and went to answer the door, assuming it was FedEx or the property manager. But when I opened it, the blood rushed straight to my head. Standing on my porch was Vanessa Parker. She was wearing a powder pink Chanel suit, holding a Hermes Birkin bag in one hand, and with the other, she was holding the kid I had seen at the mall. The boy was wearing a tiny suit, his hair carefully combed. His almond-shaped eyes looked at me with curiosity. Behind them stood a nanny holding several bags as if they were moving in. Mrs. Prescott. Vanessa smiled slightly, with a sweetness so cloying it made me nauseous. Her voice was smooth as silk. I apologize for dropping by so early. Will was at my house last night, rushed out this morning and forgot his spare car keys. I brought them over for Tyler to give to him and to show the boy where his daddy lives. Those words made my ears ring. Will was at my house. Daddy, where does his daddy live? Every word was a knife plunging into my weakest spots, but I stood in the doorway with an impenetrable face and even managed to smile. Oh, right, come in. As I stepped aside to let them pass, I noticed the surprise in Vanessa's eyes. She clearly didn't expect such a calm reaction. In her script, I was supposed to be crying or throwing a hysterical fit. She walked in, leading the boy by the hand. Her heels clicked loudly against the marble floor. The kid immediately started looking around, then looked up at Vanessa and asked, "Mommy, is this Daddy's house?" "It's huge." "Yes, sweetie. Soon Tyler will get to live here too." Vanessa leaned down and said it as if she were comforting him, but loud enough for me to hear. I closed the door. I turned around and watched the performance. In my mind, I had already cursed her entire bloodline, but the smile stayed glued to my face. "Have a seat. I'll get you some water." "Don't bother, Mrs. Prescott." Vanessa sat on the sofa with the natural air of a hostess crossing her legs. "I'm just dropping off the keys, and then I'm leaving." She said she was leaving, but she sat there like she owned the place. The nanny pulled the boy aside to play. Tyler ran over to the display cabinet in the corner of the living room, stood on his tiptoes, and reached for the crystal trophy on the bottom shelf. It was the trophy Alex had won at the National High School Coding Championship. My eyelid twitched, but I didn't stop him. Vanessa pulled an elegant keychain for William's Mercedes out of her bag, placed it on the coffee table, looked up at me, and smiled an ambiguous smile. "Mrs. Prescott, I actually came today for another reason." Here we go, I thought. Finally getting to the point. "Speak." I sat in the armchair across from her, maintaining my dignity. Vanessa smoothed her skirt, leaned forward slightly, and spoke in a low, confidential tone. Mrs. Prescott, you probably already know about Will and me. I understand how much it hurts. Honestly, I feel terrible about it. She said she felt terrible, but she wore the smile of a victor. I looked her in the eyes and stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. But you can't control feelings. Will and I have been together for 6 years. Tyler is about to turn 6. You're a mother too. You should understand a mother's heart. I don't want my son to carry the stigma of being illegitimate his whole life. He needs a complete family too. As she spoke, her eyes reddened, as if she were about to cry. I almost clapped. She was an Oscar-worthy actress. And then I asked calmly, "So what do you want?" "I want to ask you a favor." She bit her lip, faking extreme anguish. "Please, let him go. You and Will haven't felt anything for each other for a long time. Dragging out this marriage is torture for everyone. If you agree to walk away quietly, we'll compensate you generously." Compensate me generously? I almost let out a laugh. Catherine Brox had been married to William for 20 years. I saved his business with my parents' real estate. I paved the way for him with my father's contacts. I gave up 20 years of my youth to build the perfect home for him. And now, the mistress shows up and says, "We'll compensate you," like tossing a bone to a stray dog. "Miss Parker," I started, my tone glacial. "Are you finished?" She froze, clearly caught off guard by such a cold reaction. "Mrs. Prescott, I came to speak to you sincerely." Sincerely. I let out a soft laugh. "Miss Parker, if you were sincere, would you have dragged a kid to my house at the crack of dawn? Did you bring the keys, or did you come to put on a show? You know the answer." Vanessa's smile tightened, but she quickly slipped back into her pitiful expression. "Mrs. Prescott, you misunderstand me. I really—" A voice from the stairs interrupted her. Both of us turned. Alex, who had woken up who knows when, was leaning against the railing in a black hoodie, hands in his pockets. His hair was a mess, like a typical sleep-deprived high schooler, but his eyes were not a teenager's eyes. Those almond-shaped eyes, an exact copy of William's, swept over Vanessa and Tyler with a cold, calculating gaze that had no business belonging to a kid, finally settling on the keys on the table. "Who is this?" he asked, feigning ignorance. Seeing him, Vanessa's face visibly changed. She wasn't an idiot. She knew Alex's place in this family. The 18-year-old eldest son, not someone easily manipulated. "Hi, you must be Alex. Will has told me so much about you. You really are tall and handsome." Vanessa stood up and offered him a welcoming smile. Alex ignored the compliment, walked slowly down the stairs, and stopped by the display cabinet. Tyler was on his tiptoes, trying to reach the crystal trophy. His fingers barely brushed the base, and the object almost tipped over. Alex reached out and grabbed it firmly. "Hey, kid." He looked down at Tyler. His tone wasn't overly aggressive, but it wasn't friendly either. "Don't touch things that aren't yours." Tyler, startled by his tone, made a face and burst into loud tears. Vanessa rushed over, immediately scooped him up, and patted his back, glaring at me with reproach. "Mrs. Prescott, he's just a child. He only touched a trinket. Was that really necessary?" I wanted to answer, but Alex beat me to it. "Aunt Vanessa." He specifically emphasized the word aunt. "You said you brought the keys. The keys are right there. Isn't it time for you to leave?" Vanessa's face finally contorted. She obviously didn't expect Alex to be so blunt, stripping away every ounce of respect. She hugged Tyler tighter, stood up straight, and finally dropped the sweet mask. "Catherine." This time she didn't use Mrs. Prescott. "You see how your son treats me. Since we've gotten to this point, I'll be direct with you. Will's heart hasn't been with you for a long time. Sooner or later, I'll be living in this house. If you leave now with your dignity, you'll get a payout. But if you make a scene, the only one who loses is you. With that, she pulled a check from her purse and slammed it onto the coffee table. I looked down. The check was written for $500,000. William had siphoned $120 million from our family for this woman. And today, she came to buy me off with $500,000. I stared at the check for exactly 5 seconds, then reached out slowly and picked it up. A smug smile spread across Vanessa's face. She thought I was going to take it. She thought Catherine Brox's dignity was only worth $500,000. The very next second, I tore the check in half and let it drop onto the table. Miss Parker, I stood up and looked down at her. My voice was as still as a glass lake. Today you came with a child to humiliate me. I can chalk that up to your youth and lack of experience, but let me give you a piece of advice, and you'd better remember it. I stepped right into her personal space and delivered my final words with absolute clarity. This is my house, Catherine Brox's house, and until I sign those divorce papers, neither you nor your son will ever set foot in here again. Now gather your things and get the hell out. Vanessa's face twisted with rage. She ground her teeth, grabbed Tyler, and marched toward the door. At the threshold, she turned back and shot me a look of pure hatred. Catherine, you're going to regret this. We'll see. The door slammed shut. Alex, who had quietly moved to my side, handed me his phone. An audio recording was playing on the screen. I recorded everything. I didn't miss a single word. He pocketed the phone and smiled at me. Mom, when you said, "Get the hell out," that was brutal. I returned the smile and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. And the keys she brought? Alex picked up the car keys from the table and spun them on his finger. A glint appeared in his eyes. Dad's spare keys. The funny thing is, Dad drove to work in a different car today, which means he didn't forget them at her house. She brought them specifically as a prop. She wanted to prove he spent the night there. Exactly. Alex tossed the keys back onto the table with a clatter, but her prop backfired. Dad's car has GPS. I just checked it. Last night his car was parked at his place. Yeah, but his phone's GPS shows he left at 11 p.m. and was working in the office until 4 a.m. I froze, then burst out laughing. So Vanessa was lying too. William had been there, yes, but he didn't spend the night. He stayed for a bit and left. And she came over this morning with the keys to pressure me to make me believe their relationship was much more serious than it actually was. This woman isn't as secure as she pretends to be, Alex said. The more she rushes to force you out, the less secure she feels. Dad probably promised her something, but he's dragging it out. That's why she's panicking. Of course he won't follow through. I let out a cold laugh. Men like William only love themselves. Vanessa is just a pawn to him. When the novelty wears off, he'll use her and throw her away. Do you really think he'd divorce me and split his empire just for her? Alex nodded. That means our opponent isn't just Vanessa, it's Dad himself. Tomorrow at the launch, we have to destroy them both. I walked over to the panoramic window and looked at the sky, which was starting to brighten. The roses I had planted 3 years ago were blooming in the garden. Every spring their vibrant colors brought me joy. Son, what if something goes wrong tomorrow at the launch? Nothing will go wrong. Alex's voice came from behind me, firm and confident. I'll control everything from the shadows. I'm mirroring the video feed to 3 overseas cloud servers. I've already mapped the hotel security system, the emergency exits, the fire stairs, the control room. Your son has it all figured out. He walked over and showed me his phone. On the screen was a detailed floor plan of the Plaza Hotel's ballroom. Every entrance and exit was color-coded. Tomorrow I'll be at a Starbucks across the street less than a block away. If anything happens, I can be there in 3 minutes. And one more thing. He pulled a small remote from his pocket and handed it to me. This is the backup trigger for the brooch. You just press it, and all the evidence will automatically be mass emailed to the SEC whistleblower office, the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, and the IRS. If something happens at the venue that I can't control, just hit the button. Everything goes straight to the feds instantly. I took the remote. It was cold and hard. Thank you. I looked at him, feeling an indescribable mix of bitterness and pride swelling in my chest. The happiest thing Mom ever did in her life was having you. Alex looked embarrassed by my sudden sentimentality. The tips of his ears turned slightly red. He looked away and muttered, "Okay, Mom, enough melodrama. Tomorrow is war." Okay. I ruffled his hair and laughed. Outside, the sun was shining brightly, and the roses swayed in the wind. Tomorrow would be the final battle. I, Catherine Brox, had endured humiliation for 20 years and had hidden my fury for 3 days. Tomorrow, on that stage, covered by a red carpet, I would pay him back, blow for blow. At 3 p.m., while I was ironing my suit for the next day's speech, my phone rang. An unknown number with a corporate caller ID. I hesitated, but answered. "Hello, am I speaking with Alexander Prescott's mother, Catherine Brox?" The voice on the other end belonged to a middle-aged man, polite with a professional smoothness. "Yes, speaking." "I am the director of admissions at the LaRosie Institute. My name is Mr. Hughes. The matter is that this morning, Mr. William Prescott sent us an application for your son, Alexander. Do you wish to transfer him to our senior year program? We need to confirm your consent." The iron almost slipped from my hand. "What transfer?" "Wait, where is your school located?" "We are in Rolle, Switzerland. We are an elite private boarding school. Mr. Prescott requested full boarding status. That means Alexander would complete his high school education in Switzerland and only return home during the holidays. A boarding school in Switzerland. William wanted to send my son to Europe. Tomorrow was the product launch, and today he had found the time to arrange his son's transfer. Why was he so desperate to get rid of Alex? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mr. Hughes, I knew nothing about this. Please tell me, does the application have my signature?" The man paused, evidently checking documents. "The application only has Mr. Prescott's signature. The second guardian field is blank, which is why we're calling to verify. You are the mother." Correct. I am officially stating to you right now that I do not give my consent. My son is not going to Switzerland. Please cancel that application." "Understood, Mrs. Brox. We will return the application to Mr. Prescott and will not initiate the formal procedure." After hanging up, I stood completely still. The iron in my hand was still releasing steam. I looked at my reflection in the mirror and saw how tightly my jaw was clenched, my cheekbones standing out. William wanted to pull my son out of the country. I set the iron down and grabbed my phone to call Alex, but it rang again. This time, it was Amanda. "Catherine." Her voice sounded frantic. "Get to Alex's school immediately. His counselor just called me. I'm listed as an emergency contact." She said a withdrawal notice for Alex was submitted this afternoon. Is there anyone in the main office right now? My brain exploded. First the boarding school in Switzerland, now withdrawing him from his prep school in Manhattan? 2 events back to back. It wasn't a coincidence. Who is trying to withdraw him? They said it's a lawyer sent by William Prescott, with power of attorney saying Alex is transferring to study abroad, so they need to unenroll him here first. I'm on my way to the school right now. I hung up, grabbed my car keys, and bolted for the door. Before leaving, I sent a voice note to Alex. Son, your father sent a lawyer to your school to withdraw you. I'm heading there to stop him. Wait for me at home. Don't go anywhere. As I was driving out of our gated community, the phone rang again. It was Alex. Mom, don't go to the school. His voice was surprisingly calm. So calm, it made me snap. What do you mean, don't go? Your father is trying to send you to Switzerland. He submitted an application to a school in Europe in a single day and sent a lawyer to withdraw you here. He didn't ask for your opinion. He's trying to forcibly exile you. I know. I intercepted the withdrawal request an hour ago. Alex's voice carried a faint trace of mockery. I left the back door in the school's administrative portal last year. Any changes to my records require my personal two-factor authentication. Without that request, even with Dad's signature, is nothing but toilet paper. I slammed on the brakes. What did you say? I said Dad isn't sending me anywhere. Mom, turn around and come home. The roads are dangerous. I'll explain everything when you get here. I closed my eyes and leaned back against the seat. My heart was hammering in my chest. For those few minutes, I felt true terror. William had dared to touch my son. That was my only Achilles heel. He could embezzle assets, keep a mistress, have an illegitimate child. I could endure all of that until the product launch. But touching Alex, that I would not tolerate for a single second. I whipped the car around and drove back. When I walked in, Alex was already waiting for me in the living room. On the coffee table were two laptops showing different interfaces. One looked like the prep school's admin system. The other was a program I didn't recognize. Look. He turned one of the laptops toward me. This morning, I noticed Dad wasn't just handling my transfer. He was doing something else. On the screen was an email inbox. Sender, an internal Jerez Tech address. Recipients, several unknown external addresses. I looked closer. Subject report on Catherine Brox. Confidential. My fingers went cold. When was this sent? Today, at 1:23 p.m. I intercepted 3 emails, but one had already been delivered. I couldn't pull it back. Look at the attachment. He opened a PDF file. It was a multi-page report. The cover read in large letters, Report on the Marital Misconduct of Catherine Brox. In the corner was the seal of Jerez Tech's legal department. I skimmed through it. It listed over a dozen alleged marital faults. Some were photos of me having lunch with male friends, taken out of context and presented as affairs. Others were casual comments I had made on social media, twisted to look like immoral behavior. There was even a section claiming I neglected my domestic duties, using the fact that Maria had worked for us for 10 years as proof that I didn't manage the household. Every single point was absurd, but every page carried the legal department stamp and the signature of Gregory Lawson, the same head of legal who had advised William to gather proof of my fault. They plan to submit this report in court, Alex said, his voice grave. This morning, I tracked some digital footprints and found out that last week, Dad already filed preliminary motions for a contested divorce. He never had any intention of reaching an amicable settlement with you. From the very beginning, he was preparing for a brutal court battle. I collapsed heavily onto the sofa, digging my fingers into the upholstery. So his proposal to talk calmly yesterday was just a maneuver to lower my guard. Yeah, he never intended a peaceful separation, and the school in Switzerland is part of his plan. He wanted to send me far away, And while I was trapped in Europe and you were here alone, he would destroy you. Alex closed the laptop and looked at me for the first time. A genuine fury flashed in his eyes. He was conspiring against you, but he also wanted to use me as a pawn. Mom, tell me, does he even deserve to be called a father? I stared at the screen with that absurd report, and suddenly I felt calm. The initial fear and rage vanished, replaced by an icy tranquility. It was as if a bucket of ice water had been dumped over my head. Cold, yes, but my mind had never been clearer. William had been preparing for a long time. He had planned too much, siphoning assets, fabricating my crimes, exiling his son. Every step was designed to destroy me. But he miscalculated one thing. He thought that because he had raised Alex for 18 years and they shared the same blood, the boy would always be on his side. He didn't know that for those 18 years, the real pillar for that kid wasn't a man named Prescott, but the woman who sat with him at night to do homework, who cheered at every tournament, who never left his bedside when he was sick. I looked up at Alex. Son, tell me the evidence you have. The embezzlement, the insider trading, Lawson's email, this report. Are they enough to make sure he can't get back up after the launch? Alex adjusted his glasses and smiled. The smile carried teenage arrogance and a touch of mischief. More than enough. And he won't just fail to get back up. Mom, do you know what I was doing this afternoon? What I helped him. How he wanted to send me to Switzerland right this afternoon. I logged into his Cayman account and wired a $500 application deposit to the boarding school. I froze, not understanding why he had done that. Why would you send money? To lower his guard. He thinks I'm cooperating. He thinks I'm actually going to pack my bags obediently and go to Europe. Alex paused, his eyes gleaming. 20 minutes ago, he sent me a message. He turned his phone toward me. It was a text thread with William. Well, Alex, I'm glad you decided to help process the paperwork yourself. When you settle in Switzerland, Dad will send you a generous allowance every month. I won't let you down. Thanks, Dad. Can I go to the product launch tomorrow before I leave? I want to learn. The reply was instant. Of course you can. I'll reserve a VIP seat for you. I stared at the messages, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. William still believed his son was on his side, completely oblivious that this 18-year-old was sharpening a knife right behind his back. Alex closed all the programs and looked at me seriously. The soft light from the window fell on his face, making his youthful features look hardened. Mom, tomorrow I'll personally tear up the last shred of decency left between you and Dad. All you have to do is be there, stand tall, and let everyone see that this woman isn't just a pretty vase. I looked at him for a long time and then said slowly, 20 years ago, I gave up everything to change my name from Catherine Brox to Mrs. Prescott. The day after tomorrow, I'll make sure everyone remembers my real name. Wednesday, the Grand Ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, 9:30 a.m. Half an hour until Gervais Tech's 2024 product launch. I was sitting at my vanity at home, pinning the sapphire brooch to the lapel of my black suit. I had picked out that suit 3 days ago with Amanda. Minimalist cut, sharp lines, perfectly tailored sleeves, paired with black stilettos. Looking in the mirror, I saw the new Catherine Brox, or rather, the one I had been 20 years ago before I got married, before they called me William's wife. The woman in the mirror was serious, her gaze cold and sharp, like a blade freshly pulled from its sheath. Alex's voice rang out from the hallway. Mom, are you ready? Ready. I walked out of the bedroom. Alex was leaning against the wall, dressed today in a flawless navy blue suit, his hair carefully combed. He looked like a young Ivy League grad. He looked me up and down and gave a thumbs up. 10 out of 10. Let's go. We barely spoke during the drive to the hotel. The car was silent save for the occasional prompt from the GPS. I watched the city streets roll by thinking about only one thing. 20 years ago, on this exact day, dressed in a white wedding gown, I had stepped into the world of the Prescott family. Today, in a black suit, I was walking into Juray's Tech's launch event to personally hand William his resignation. In a way, the circle was closing. Near the hotel, Alex got out at a Starbucks just down the block. He adjusted my brooch one last time and said quietly, "The camera points forward. The mic will pick up the whole room. I'll be monitoring from the coffee shop. If you need me to switch the feed on the screens, touch your left earlobe and I'll know it's time." I nodded. "Mom." He stopped me just as I was about to walk away. "No matter what happens, I've got your back." I patted his hand, and without another word, I headed to the hotel. Inside the lobby, massive banners carried the Juray's Tech logo and the event slogan, "Juray's Tech Designing the Future." Groups of guests with VIP badges gathered by the elevators, exchanging pleasantries as they headed to the ballroom. I walked through the crowd, feeling eyes on me from all sides. That's William's wife. Yes, Catherine Brox. What is she doing here? She never comes to the launches. God, she looks stunning today. So young. I ignored the whispers and walked straight into the ballroom. About 200 people were already seated. The first 2 rows were reserved for board members and key partners. The press occupied the center, with department heads and employees in the back. A massive LED screen in the center of the stage looped a promotional video for the new product. My seat was in the second row near the aisle. It wasn't the most prominent spot, but it had a perfect view of the stage. The place card read, "Catherine Prescott, spouse of the CEO." Spouse of the CEO. I stared at those words and smiled without a trace of humor. Exactly at 10 a.m., the lights dimmed and then flared back up. A host in a red evening gown stepped onto the stage, flashing a $1 million smile, and announced the start of Juray's Tech's 2024 product launch. First came a spectacular video to build the hype. Then, the Chief Technology Officer took the stage to detail the specs of the new product. Polite applause echoed periodically through the room. Everything was going according to plan, just like previous years. I sat in silence, watching the presentation slowly brushing my left earlobe. The brooch vibrated faintly. It was Alex, giving the signal that all systems were go. 20 minutes later, the CTO stepped down. The lights dimmed again. The host returned to the stage with a broader smile and a more powerful voice. And now, please welcome to the stage the CEO of Juray's Tech Incorporated, Mr. William Prescott. A spotlight hit the center of the front row. William stood up, buttoned his tailored navy suit, and confidently walked up the steps to the stage. He wore a crisp white shirt and a silver-gray tie. He looked vibrant, successful, like he hadn't even hit 40. He stepped up to the microphone and cleared his throat. The room fell silent. Distinguished board members, partners, members of the press, good morning. Thank you for joining us today for the unveiling of Juray's Tech's latest innovation. His voice was deep and resonant, loaded with the polished confidence of years of public speaking. I used to love hearing his voice. It used to make me feel safe. Now, I just felt like I had been blind for 2 decades. Juray's Tech is 22 years old, William continued. From a small electronics provider, we've grown into a multi-sector conglomerate spanning smart home tech, green energy, and biotechnology. This would not have been possible without your unwavering support." A wave of polite applause rippled through the room. He nodded and continued as the sound faded. "Today, I am here to announce not just a new product, but a critical executive decision regarding the future of Gerace Tech." My heart started racing. There she was. Sitting dead center in the front row was Vanessa Parker. She wore a bright red power suit, her makeup flawless, absolutely radiant. When William mentioned the executive decision, the corners of her lips curled up, and she sat up even straighter in her chair. Miss Vanessa Parker, who has been with Gerace Tech for 5 years, has always been my right hand, demonstrating exceptional capability in executive management and market expansion. By decision of the Board of Directors, effective as of today, Miss Vanessa Parker is officially appointed Vice President of Gerace Tech Incorporated. The spotlight immediately shifted to Vanessa. She stood up and gave an elegant bow. Her smile was restrained and refined, but triumph burned in her eyes. Applause erupted, mixed with hushed murmurs. Wasn't she just his executive assistant, straight to vice president? Haven't you heard? They say they... William raised a hand to quiet the room, turned to Vanessa with a smile, and prepared to invite her to the stage. It was at that exact moment that I stood up. My black suit didn't stand out much, but the second I got to my feet, the air in the room seemed to freeze. Several directors in the front row turned around. One of them recognized me and offered an awkward smile. "Mrs. Prescott, we didn't even see you come in." William saw me too. His smile froze for a fraction of a second, but it snapped right back. "Catherine, what are you—" I stepped out of my row and walked slowly down the center aisle toward the stage. The sharp click of my stilettos echoed clearly in the completely silent ballroom. 1 step, 2, 3. All eyes were locked on me. 200 pairs of eyes. People started whispering. Phones came out. "Mr. CEO." I stopped at the foot of the stage and looked up at him, still smiling. My voice rang out clear, reaching every corner of the room. "Today is a massive day for Gerace Tech, and as your wife, I've also prepared a gift for you and the board. I wonder if you'd like to see it." William's face finally changed. He knew me. After 20 years together, he knew how to read my micro-expressions. I was smiling now, but in my eyes, he saw something he had never seen before. "Catherine, the presentation schedule was approved in advance. If there are any questions, we can discuss them later." His tone remained pleasant, but impatience was bleeding through. Vanessa's face had also darkened. She was glaring at me, her lips pressed into a thin line. I turned to the audience. Distinguished members of the board, members of the press. I, Catherine Brox, am here today to ask you to bear witness. The following materials were recovered from Gerace Tech's internal servers. Their authenticity and integrity have been verified via blockchain encryption. If you have any doubts, you are welcome to conduct an independent forensic audit. The second I finished speaking, I raised my hand and touched my left earlobe. The promo video on the massive LED screen cut out abruptly. The screen went black for a second, and then a new image appeared. A collective gasp ripped through the room. On the giant screen was the photo of William hugging the boy Vanessa glued to him like a loving kitten. Bold white text cut across the image. Gerace Tech CEO William Prescott is having an affair with his subordinate, Vanessa Parker. They share a 5-year-old illegitimate child. The ballroom exploded. Several board members in the front row leaped to their feet. The journalists in the back surged forward like madmen. Camera shutters fired non-stop. Blinding flashes lit up the room. Streamers instantly pointed their phones at the screen, commentating frantically. Breaking news. Massive scandal hits Gerace Tech CEO Mid-presentation, William's face turned ash white. He whipped around to look at the screen, the veins in his forehead bulging. He ran to the edge of the stage and screamed, "Who put this up? Cut the feed! Turn off the screen!" He yelled at the tech crew in the booth. But the technicians were panicking, clicking their mice desperately. The image on the screen didn't budge. It was locked in. I thought of Alex sitting in the Starbucks. They could smash the soundboard with a hammer and nothing would change. Chaos reigned. The press crowded the front of the stage, lenses flashing like fireworks. The executives in the front row were pale. Mr. Carmichael, the silver-haired senior director, who was the company's second-largest shareholder, stood up and slammed his cane against the floor. "William Prescott, what the hell is the meaning of this?" William stumbled backward, hitting the LED screen like a fish flopping on a deck. His lips moved, but no words came out. "It's a lie! It's a deep fake!" She set me up. I stood below with my arms crossed, calmly watching his hysterical meltdown. William was trapped on stage with the proof of his disgrace glowing right behind him, facing 200 pairs of eyes filled with shock, fury, or pure morbid curiosity. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His perfectly slicked back hair had come undone, plastering to his skin. His aura of invincibility evaporated, replaced by absolute panic. "It's fake! Someone is trying to smear me!" he shouted, his voice cracking, entirely different from his usual smooth CEO baritone. "Tech crew, shut this off right now." The technicians were losing their minds, hammering on keyboards, but the screens stayed locked. The journalists had already swarmed the front. Cameras wouldn't stop firing. Mr. Carmichael, his face purple with rage, pointed his cane at William. "William, is this true? Have you lost your mind?" Other shareholders were standing up, shouting over the uproar. "What is going on here? Mr. Prescott, you owe us an explanation." William's lips trembled. Sweat dripped down his face, soaking his shirt collar. Instinctively, he looked at Vanessa. The woman who just moments ago was glowing in anticipation of her triumph was now slumped in her chair, her face white as a sheet. Her red power suit looked scandalously loud under the camera flashes. A reporter spotted her and shoved a microphone in her face. "Miss Parker, is this you? Is your affair with Mr. Prescott real? Is that child your illegitimate son?" Vanessa covered her face with her hands and shrieked. "Don't record me! Don't record me! It's not me!" She was babbling incoherently, looking nothing like an elegant vice president. Her colleagues backed away from her like she was radioactive. I watched the scene without an ounce of pity. An icy satisfaction bloomed in my chest, like drinking a glass of cold water on a scorching day. But it wasn't enough. I touched my left earlobe again. The image on the screen changed. This time, it showed the financial evidence Alex had compiled. Bank statements from the Cayman Islands, a spreadsheet of transfers spanning 6 years, totaling $40 million. Everything was laid out with brutal clarity. Every transaction was linked to real estate, luxury cars, and designer goods in Vanessa's name. The text read, "It has been established that William Prescott utilized an offshore account in the Cayman Islands to embezzle $40 million in marital and corporate assets. These funds were used to purchase a Malibu villa, a Manhattan apartment, luxury vehicles, and other assets for his mistress, Vanessa Parker." Details to the right. The room erupted all over again. Mr. Carmichael pushed his way through the press, grabbed a loose microphone off the podium, and yelled, his voice shaking with rage. "William Prescott, did you siphon corporate funds? Is there company money in that $40 million? Answer me right now." William was paralyzed. He opened and closed his mouth, but couldn't make a sound. I touched my earlobe one last time. The screen switched again, This time, it was the hidden camera video from his office. William stood behind Vanessa with his hand on her shoulder. Vanessa, what if she doesn't accept the divorce? William smiled dismissively, and his words echoed through the massive ballroom speakers. She's just a pretty vase. If she's smart, she'll take a payout and leave. And if not, I'll throw her out with nothing. If anyone still doubted the authenticity of the documents, the video was the final nail in the coffin. The man in the video was undeniably William. His face, his voice, there was no denying it. The words pretty vase and throw her out with nothing dropped on the room like a bomb. Mr. Carmichael was shaking uncontrollably. He raised his cane and pointed it straight at William. So this is what you've been doing behind our backs, appointing your mistress as VP. And what about the insider trading? What the hell is that? That last question left the room in dead silence for a fraction of a second before it exploded with double the intensity. Insider trading. 3 financial reporters lunged forward at the same time. Mr. Carmichael, you said insider trading. Is there an SEC violation at Gerace Tech? Carmichael realized it had slipped out in his blind rage, but it was too late to take it back. He took a deep breath and addressed the press. Since it's all out in the open, I won't hide it. Yesterday, I saw the draft of the internal audit. William Prescott executed trades through offshore accounts ahead of our major earnings reports. The volume is estimated at $50 million. The evidence is irrefutable. This time, even the lower-level employees in the back lost their minds. People were jumping up, covering their mouths in shock, recording everything on their phones. William slumped against the LED screen like his spine had been ripped out. His face wasn't just pale anymore. It was the ashen gray of a corpse. "Mom, the police are here." Alex's voice rang in my ear, calm and steady. I looked toward the ballroom entrance. 6 men in windbreakers and suits pushed through the doors. The letters FBI glowed in bright yellow on the backs of their jackets, accompanied by NYPD detectives in suits. As they marched forward, the crowd parted like the Red Sea. Every camera pivoted toward them. The press was in ecstasy. It was the corporate scandal of the decade. The lead FBI agent, a square-jawed man in his 40s, stepped onto the stage and pulled a warrant from his jacket. "William Prescott, you are under investigation for federal securities fraud, insider trading, and corporate embezzlement. We need you to come with us." Before William could react, a detective approached Vanessa. She was in an absolute panic, clutching her purse and trying to back away. "What are you doing? I didn't do anything." "Vanessa, Parker, you are under investigation as an accomplice to wire fraud and corporate embezzlement. Put your hands behind your back." I can't describe the feeling of the massive boulder that had been crushing my chest for years, finally being lifted. Every piece of that boulder had been placed there by William. The lies, the betrayal, the manipulation, the contempt. Now, all those stones had turned into data videos and federal indictments, crashing right down on his head. The ballroom was a cacophony of shouting and camera shutters. I stood in the crowd for a moment. No one touched me. Then, the journalists swarmed. "Ms. Brox, did you gather this evidence yourself? Are you filing for divorce, Miss Brox? Do you have any comment on your husband calling you a vase?" A reporter shoved a mic in my face. I tilted my head slightly so the sapphire brooch caught the light. I smiled. "I will answer all questions on my social media within the hour. Right now, I only want to say one thing. Mr. Prescott owes me an explanation. And he owes one to all of you, too." The police started clearing a path. William was being led out in handcuffs. He looked catatonic. As he passed Vanessa, he didn't even look at her. Vanessa tried to run after him, screaming, "Will!" but a detective yanked her back. They led her away in the opposite direction. She tripped over her heels and almost fell. No one helped her. People backed away from her like she had the plague. I could hear her crying and screaming that it was a mistake, that she was innocent. No one answered. I stood there, watching them get hauled away. Amanda somehow pushed her way through the crowd to my side and grabbed my hand. Her palms were cold and sweaty, but her voice shook with pure adrenaline. "Catherine, you did it. You really did it." I stayed silent. The emotions flooding through me couldn't be put into words. Under the gaze of hundreds of people, I slowly lifted my chin and walked toward the exit. Amanda shoved a path open for me. Alex's voice came through the earpiece one last time. "Mom, I just left the coffee shop. I'll wait for you downstairs." I nodded. The sapphire on my lapel gleamed brightly like the coldest star in the night sky. When I stepped out of the ballroom, I noticed my hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from the release of nerves that had been stretched to their absolute limit. The hotel corridor was covered in thick carpet, and I walked down it with firm, steady steps. The elevator doors opened. Inside were several hotel guests who had come out to see what the commotion was. Seeing me, they froze and took a step back. They didn't know who I was. They just wanted a glimpse of the protagonist of the scandal. I didn't look at them. I looked at the mirrored walls of the elevator. My face was calm. No trace of tears, no gloating, just eyes that shone brighter than usual. The doors closed, and I heard someone whisper outside. That was the CEO's wife. She just sent her husband to federal prison in the middle of his presentation. Savage. I leaned against the elevator wall and let out a soft laugh. In the mirror, Catherine Brox smiled back at me. "You think I'm savage? That's because you have no idea what he did to me." The elevator dinged as it reached the lobby. I walked through the grand foyer. Sunlight streamed through the revolving doors, spilling gold over the marble floors. Alex was waiting for me outside, holding a cup of coffee. His face was completely relaxed. The hurricane that had just leveled the ballroom didn't seem to affect him at all. "Vanilla latte, right?" He handed me the cup. I took it and took a sip. The hot liquid soothed my throat, and then I finally understood. It was all over. No, not yet. Alex took a sip of his Americano. Everything was recorded. The live stream, 3 cloud backups, automatic routing. Right before the FBI walked in, I sent the entire uncensored cache to the SEC whistleblower portal. I'm guessing some federal prosecutors are watching the replay during their lunch break right now. I looked at him and suddenly I realized that this kid in a suit and tie was no longer the sleepy boy I knew. He had the spine of a man now. "Come on, Mom, let's go home." I gripped my coffee cup and stepped out onto the bustling New York street. The sun was warm. People hurried past in their daily routines. No one paid attention to us. We, a mother and son who had just survived a Category 5 hurricane, walked down the avenue like 2 ordinary people heading home after a movie. By that afternoon, the video of the launch had already gone entirely viral. Amanda sent me dozens of screenshots from X, formerly Twitter. 4 of the top 10 trending topics were about Juray's Tech. Number 1, Juray's Tech CEO arrested. Number 2, William Prescott scandal. Number 3, Catherine Brox's revenge. Number 4, Juray's Tech stock crashes. Wall Street analysts and internet sleuths mixed in the comments. Some praised me, calling it the revenge of the decade. Others called me cold, saying that after 20 years of marriage, I could have handled it privately. But the most debated topic was the illegitimate child. Was Tyler really his son? That question had been bothering me too. On the drive home, I asked Alex. He stayed silent for a few seconds before admitting that he only had the birth certificate. He didn't have actual proof, but he added that days ago, he had hired a private investigator to get a hair sample from Tyler and rush it to a lab. The results would arrive any minute, but Alex insisted we use them strategically, saving them for the most critical moment. And that moment arrived at the first pretrial divorce mediation. The court summons arrived the day after the launch. William, currently out on bail while awaiting his federal indictment, had filed an emergency motion for mediation, demanding we resolve the division of assets and custody before the formal divorce trial began. When my lawyer Mitchell called me, his voice was grave. William hired Sullivan and Associates, the most ruthless divorce lawyer in the city. Word is, he paid a $2 million retainer. He's going to fight to the bitter end. That snake, Gregory Lawson, probably cooked something up with him. Be ready. I know, I replied. 2 days later, at 9 a.m., we met in a conference room at the Manhattan Family Court. When William walked in, I barely recognized him. After spending just 2 nights in a holding cell before making bail, his signature slicked back hair had collapsed. A scruffy beard covered his jaw, and dark bags dragged his eyes down. He looked like he had aged 10 years. He wore a wrinkled suit that hung awkwardly on his deflated frame. The almighty CEO, William Prescott, was gone. He was just a broken man. Sitting next to him was his lawyer, Sullivan. The powerhouse attorney wore a sharp, tailored suit and carried a leather briefcase radiating absolute arrogance. As William sat down, Sullivan whispered something in his ear. William nodded and finally looked up at me. His eyes held a mix of deep hatred and a pathetic plea. I didn't look away. I stared right back until he was the first to drop his gaze. The mediator, a retired judge, opened the session. Sullivan took the floor first. He spoke for 15 minutes. The essence of his argument boiled down to 2 points. First, Catherine Brox had unilaterally leaked unverified, defamatory information, causing Mr. Prescott severe emotional distress and catastrophic reputational damage, reserving the right to sue for defamation. Second, the division of marital assets must be equitable, not the ridiculous proposal submitted by Brox, which would practically leave him destitute. Leave him with nothing. Sullivan raised his voice with theatrical indignation. Mr. Prescott is the founder and largest shareholder of Juray's Tech. He spent 20 years building this empire for his family. He is entitled to a fair division of property, not to be thrown out on the street without a dime. His performance over, he sat back down with the smug look of a winner. Silence filled the room. Everyone looked at me. Mitchell was about to stand up, but I stopped him. I've got this. I stood up, picked up a manila envelope from the table, walked to the center, and dropped it there. Your Honor, gentlemen, before we discuss the division of assets, I ask that you review one document. Sullivan frowned. Miss Brox, I request that we adhere to the agreed procedural order. It's a DNA paternity report. I cut him off. My voice was low but sharp as a razor. Test subjects William Prescott and the alleged illegitimate child, Tyler Parker. Probability of paternity, 0%. This child has absolutely no biological connection to William Prescott. The air in the room froze completely. For 5 seconds, there was total silence. And then William violently shoved his chair back and leaped to his feet. His eyes looked ready to pop out of his skull. What did you say? Impossible. That's a lie. His lawyer froze too, instinctively trying to pull William back down into his seat, but Sullivan's own face registered pure shock. The mediator took the report, flipped to the final page, and looked up at William with a very complicated expression. He slid the report across the table to Sullivan. Sullivan snatched it up and scanned the lines. The color drained from his face. He opened his mouth a few times, but couldn't get a sound out. He turned to William and whispered something so low I could barely hear it, but I could read his lips. "The test is legit, Will." William stood paralyzed, like he'd been struck by lightning. The expression on his face shifted from rage to confusion, and then to something I had never seen in him. A total, catastrophic collapse. The woman he had supported for 6 years, the one he had spent $40 million on, the one he had betrayed his 20-year marriage for, had played him for a fool. I looked at this man who, just minutes ago, was preparing to go to war with me in court. He used to look down his nose at me, treating me like a useless piece of furniture in his big house. Now, he slumped back into his chair, his face gray. His mouth opened and closed like a fish suffocating on dry land, unable to make a single sound. The mediator cleared his throat, calling for order. The authenticity of this report will be verified by the court. However, based on this new evidence, does Mr. Prescott still wish to pursue custody and support claims regarding the extramarital child? William couldn't speak. Sullivan answered for him, his previous arrogance entirely gone. "We withdraw those claims for the time being." Mitchell seized the moment, stood up, and slammed my terms for the divorce settlement onto the table. He slowly flipped through the pages, his voice even. "Mr. Prescott, my client submitted her asset division proposal last week. All real estate properties go to Catherine Brox. Full custody of Alexander Prescott goes to her. You will return the $40 million in embezzled funds plus damages. If you sign this agreement today, we can waive a forensic audit of your remaining shell companies." Mitchell paused, pulled several thick folders marked confidential from his briefcase, and dropped them onto the table with a heavy thud. Sullivan flinched. "We have the detailed transaction logs from your Cayman accounts and your shadow corporate ledgers," Mitchell said. "If we don't reach a settlement today, these files go straight to the Department of Justice and the IRS." Silence descended once again. William stared blankly at the folders on the table. A muscle in his cheek twitched uncontrollably. Sullivan flipped through a few pages of the top folder, then snapped it shut decisively. "Will." Sullivan turned to him, placing a hand on his shoulder and leaning in close. "The reality is that we have a losing hand. She has vastly more evidence than we anticipated, on top of the DNA test. What Vanessa was doing behind your back is legally much more complicated than what made the news. Going to trial for this divorce will only bury you deeper in the federal cases." William's throat bobbed. Slowly, very slowly, he turned his head toward me. His eyes no longer held the pride or power they once did. There was only emptiness, like a room stripped of all its furniture. "Catherine." He spoke my name. His voice was barely a whisper. I thought he would say something cruel, or maybe beg for mercy. He stayed silent for a long time, and then said, "I'll sign." When those two words left his lips, I felt something inside me tremble. But it wasn't pity or compassion. It was a profound, inexplicable relief. 20 years. I had finally heard the ultimate truth from that man. Not "I love you," not "I'm sorry," just "I'll sign." The mediator instructed the clerk to prepare the binding decree. Mitchell meticulously reviewed every single clause. Sullivan handed William a heavy Mont Blanc pen. William took it and stared for a long time at the blank signature line on the last page. The fluorescent lights in the room were bright and harsh. Finally, he signed. His hand was shaking so badly that the final stroke of his signature turned into a jagged line. Then he stood up. As he passed by me to leave, he stopped. He didn't look up, but he spoke quietly, just loud enough for the two of us to hear. The biggest mistake of my life wasn't trusting Vanessa. It was betraying you. He walked out the door. I stood in the room, reached out and took the agreement. The ink from William's signature was still wet. 20 years of knowing each other, 18 years of marriage, from college sweethearts to a billionaire mansion, from 2 people to 3. Our entire shared existence had been reduced to those 2 words: betraying you. I picked up a pen and flipped to the plaintiff's signature page. There was a time when signing my name felt like writing Mrs. William Prescott, an accessory to my owner. Today I wrote a single name, Catherine Brox. Clear, sharp, without a single wasted stroke. The day the judge finalized the divorce decree, the weather in New York was spectacular. Sunlight streamed through the high windows of the courthouse, flooding the marble floors. I walked out of the courtroom wearing a flawless white blazer. Mitchell and his paralegal trailed behind me. Amanda linked her arm through mine. Her eyes were red from crying. The court had ruled. 1. The marriage between plaintiff Catherine Brox and defendant William Prescott is dissolved. 2. All marital real estate properties are awarded to the plaintiff. 3. Full custody of Alexander Prescott is awarded to the plaintiff. 4. The defendant is ordered to restitute the $40 million in embezzled marital assets. 5. The 15% of voting shares in Gerace Tech, currently held in trust, will be transferred to the plaintiff. The defendant must execute the transfer within 10 business days. 6. The defendant's countersuit for emotional distress and defamation is dismissed with prejudice. 7. All legal fees will be paid by the defendant. When the judge read the ruling, I sat with my back perfectly straight, without shedding a single tear. Amanda, on the other hand, sobbed into her hands in the gallery. When we walked out, she insisted she was crying tears of joy, not sadness. "Catherine Brox, you owe me a massive steak dinner tonight," she muttered, sniffling. "This whole ordeal ruined my appetite for a week. I lost 5 pounds. You have to reimburse me in calories." I laughed. "It's a deal." As we exited the courthouse, a mob of journalists surrounded us. Ever since the product launch, my name had been on the front page of the Wall Street Journal and the New York Post. On TikTok, they had dubbed me the modern queen of corporate revenge. "Miss Brox, now that the ruling is final, can you comment on the settlement? Catherine, rumors say you'll be taking over as the new CEO of Gerace Tech. Is it true?" I lowered my sunglasses and smiled at the cameras. The court's ruling is a matter of public record. As for Gerace Tech, everything will be addressed tomorrow after the emergency board meeting. With that, I got into my waiting SUV and drove off, leaving the camera flashes behind. The next day, in the executive boardroom at Gerace Tech headquarters, the emergency meeting convened. There was only one item on the agenda: who would replace William Prescott as CEO? The atmosphere was suffocatingly tense. 11 directors sat around the oval mahogany table, chaired by Mr. Carmichael. 2 seats were empty. I sat alone at the far end. In front of me were the legal documents transferring the 15% of voting shares into my name, along with the court order. I had come alone. Bringing an entourage to a meeting like this was a sign of weakness. Mr. Carmichael banged the gavel. "Gentlemen, I have called this meeting because Gerace Tech is a rudderless ship. Following William's situation, our stock has plummeted 37% in a week. 4 major partners have canceled their contracts. Institutional investors are demanding we appoint a new CEO immediately. If we don't have a captain in 2 days, they will trigger the penalty clauses and pull their funding. He paused, swept his gaze across the room, and stopped on me. Catherine Brox currently holds 15% of Gerace Tech's shares, combined with the 5% held in trust for her son, Alex. They control a 20% voting bloc, making them the largest majority shareholders. According to the corporate bylaws, she has the right to nominate a candidate for CEO. Mr. Jenkins, the director, famous for his skepticism, cleared his throat and spoke cautiously. Miss Brox, you are the majority shareholder, and your right to that seat is unquestionable. But, you see, the state Gerace Tech is in. A stock market crash, partners fleeing management chaos, it's an absolute bloodbath. If you believe, he tried to phrase it as politely as possible, that you lack the operational experience required to navigate this, we could hire an external CEO specializing in crisis management. The room fell silent for a few seconds. Some took a sip of water, others glanced at me sideways. I stood up, walked to the head of the table, and gripped the back of the black leather executive chair. That was the seat William had occupied for 15 years. I pulled the chair out firmly and sat down. Mr. Jenkins, gentlemen of the board. I held the gaze of every single one of them. My voice was calm and authoritative. Gerace Tech was founded by my ex-husband, but I was the one who saved it. 20 years ago, when William was drowning in debt, I sold my parents' real estate to keep the lights on. 15 years ago, when the business model pivoted, I used my late father's political and business network to secure our first major federal contracts. I never asked for recognition or a title because I believed a marriage shouldn't keep a ledger. The room was dead silent. But today, sitting in this chair, I am not here to appeal to sentiment. Gerace Tech doesn't just need a CEO right now. It needs stability. The market needs to see that this company has a future, not just a scandal. I opened the folder in front of me and slid copies of a restructuring strategy down the center of the table. It was the crisis management plan Alex and I had mapped out over the last few days. Number 1, I said, listing them off. Immediately terminate all active contracts linked to William Prescott and Vanessa Parker. Initiate an independent forensic audit of all vendor contracts from the last 5 years. Any irregularities will be voluntarily turned over to the SEC and the DOJ. Number 2. Suspend the aggressive expansion into green energy. Consolidate all resources into our core competency, smart home tech. We will close 3 major pending enterprise contracts within 60 days. Number 3. Institute an independent ethics and compliance committee chaired by a top-tier external law firm to rebuild our corporate governance from the ground up. I leaned forward, rested my forearms on the table, and looked at each director. I have the right to sit in this chair, and today, I am not asking the board to vote on whether I should be CEO. I am asking you to vote on my plan to dig Gerace Tech out of the grave. The silence hung heavy in the boardroom. Then Mr. Carmichael raised his hand. Then a second director. Then a third. Finally, even Mr. Jenkins slowly raised his right hand, letting out a dry laugh. Miss Brox, I'll be honest. I was dead set on opposing you walking in here. But your action plan is more concrete and more ruthless than any external crisis manager I've interviewed. You have my vote. When Mr. Carmichael announced the results, his voice trembled with solemnity. Unanimous. Catherine Brox is appointed CEO of Gerace Tech Incorporated, effective immediately. Sparse applause broke out at first, then swelled into a deafening roar. I sat in the CEO's chair, feeling my heart beat with a steady, unbreakable rhythm. After the meeting, I was the last to leave. Walking into the CEO's office on the 28th floor, I finally understood how breathtaking the view of the Manhattan skyline was from up there. William had never let anyone touch his office. I had only seen that view once, looking over his shoulder. Now, that view belonged to me. On the desk was a framed photo of William and Vanessa. I picked it up, looked at it for a second, and dropped it into the trash can. The silver frame hit the bottom with a dull thud, putting the final period on a 20-year story. My phone buzzed. A message from Alex. "Mom, how did the board vote?" I replied. "Unanimous. Your mother is the CEO of Juray's Tech." He instantly sent a thumbs up emoji and added, "Dad's second hearing for the federal case is scheduled for the 15th of next month. The prosecution is confident the insider trading charges will stick. His lawyer says that with the evidence we handed over, he's looking at a minimum of 7 to 10 years in federal prison." I looked at those numbers and felt neither joy nor sadness, just peace. That man would finally pay the price for his choices, and my life was finally moving forward. That night, I drove back to the estate in the suburbs, mostly to pack. The house was officially mine, but I had no desire to keep living there. There were too many ghosts of William. I had already asked Amanda to help me look at luxury apartments in the city, closer to the office. When I opened the door, Alex was sitting on the living room sofa, typing on his laptop. The massive TV on the wall was tuned to CNBC, where the anchors were discussing the leadership change at Juray's Tech. This morning, the board of directors of Juray's Tech unanimously appointed Catherine Brox as CEO. This marks the dawn of the post-Prescott era for the tech giant. The post-Prescott era. Alex didn't look up from his screen. He just pointed at the TV. "Mom, you're a financial news superstar now. You better make sure your makeup is flawless when you go out, or the paparazzi will catch you on a bad day." I laughed and gave him a gentle swat on the back of his head. "None of your business. By the way, are you free this weekend? Come with me to look at some new apartments." He closed his laptop, leaned back against the sofa, and adjusted his glasses. "No need to look. I already pulled the data on that building you liked in Hudson Yards. Floor plans, HOA management history, parking security protocols, neighborhood infrastructure. Your son researched it all. I narrowed it down to the top 3 penthouses. You just have to pick the view. Is there anything you don't hack or investigate?" I didn't know whether to laugh or scold him. It's an occupational hazard for a hacker. Alex laughed, took off his glasses, wiped them, and put them back on, looking at me. The blue light of the evening made his features look sharper, more defined. That boy was already half a man. "Mom, what are you going to do now? Besides running the company, I mean." I walked over to the window and pulled back the heavy curtains. The setting sun painted the New York skyline in warm amber tones. I'll pull the company out of the mud, stabilize the stock, and eventually hand it over to a professional executive. When you graduate from college, if you want to run it, it's yours. If not, you can keep building your own tech. And then I turned around and smiled. I'm going to travel through Europe. Then I'll come back. I'll restore the old country house my parents left me upstate, and I'll plant a garden full of roses. Alex stood up and walked over to me. We stood side by side, looking out at the bright lights of the city. "Mom, you said the happiest thing you ever did in your life was having me." "Yes." "Why?" He pulled out his phone. On the screen was the registration document for a newly formed LLC. The name read, Brox & Son Technologies. Under the Founders section, both of our names were listed. "I have something to tell you too." He put his phone away and looked at me. His voice was calm and absolute. The smartest thing I've ever done in my life was grabbing your hand that day in the lawyer's office and telling you to fight. I stared at the company name in my mind, his last name and mine. No Prescott anywhere to be found. Before the tears could sting my nose, I pulled him toward me and hugged him. He didn't pull away. Outside the window, the city lights flared to life. The city, as always, was infinitely alive. And for the first time in a long time, so was I.